Are you looking for a shiny new Commander deck? Are you tired of these boring Universes Within cards? Well, we have the Commander just for you. Presenting the Master Transcendent. More than just a lad duct taped to a TV, he slices, he dices, he mills, he reanimates, he wins games. Try today.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Too Sweet MTG, welcome to another Commander deck tech. In today's video, we're going to be looking at the Master Transcendent. It is 1 black, green and a blue for a 2/4 legendary artifact creature mutant. It has, whenever the Master Transcendent enters the battlefield, target player gets 2 rad counters. For those who haven't seen what a rad counter is yet, at the beginning of the player with the rad counters pre-combat main phase, if they have any rad counters, they mill that many cards. For each non-land card milled this way, they lose 1 life and a rad counter. The Master Transcendent also has tap to put target creature card in a graveyard that was milled this turn onto the battlefield under your control. It is a green mutant with base power and toughness 3/3, and as a reminder it'll lose all other colours and all other creature types. The fact you don't have to pay mana for that ability, you just put the creature into play, is really good. And this card looks like a ton of fun to me. Being able to just steal creatures from our opponent's graveyards is always something that I'm up for. There are so many good utility creatures that just see a lot of play in Commander, and with the Master Transcendent, we will get all of them and all of their lovely value. To do that, we're first going to run a bunch more mill, that in this build will want to affect every player. This way, we get to use every player's deck as a resource just for us. The second part is that we're going to run a bunch of untap effects, specifically so that we can untap our Commander. This will mean we get multiple creatures that have been milled in a turn into play under our control. We'll use that engine to build us an overwhelming board state of value, turn them sideways and win the game. Because of that ability of our Commander, we are going to be looking for a lot of our effects to be on creatures so that we can get their effects if we mill them. A quick note on how this video will work. We've broken out the deck into all the different sections that it needs to work. We won't give a full deck list, rather we'll go over each section and give you a bunch of different options that you can run. This way you can fully customize the deck and make it your own. Any card we mentioned will be down in the description below. While you're there, please give the video a like. First up we have our group mill section. These are effects that'll put creatures into everyone's graveyard, for us to pick the best ones to steal and then to reanimate with our Commander. We're looking for between 12 to 16 bits of these in the deck, because we do want to see multiple of them throughout the game. First up we have Raul Troubleshooter. This is basically a mini version of our Commander, so it's some nice redundancy just to have access to, while also being some repeatable mill as well. Keeping it a Fallout themed deck with some extra cards that give players rad counters. We have cards like Vexing Radgull, Infesting Radroach, Tato Farmer, Bloatfly Swarm, Nightkin Ambusher, the Wise Mothman and Screeching Scorchbeast. Each rad counter that these dish out is an extra bit of mill, and what's nice is that they will mill on our opponent's turns as well, meaning we can steal creatures that they mill just before they think about attacking us. This means that we can steal a blocker, as well as some powerful enter the battlefield effects. These are also just a great flavour win for the deck, so I'd definitely consider jamming these in. Next up we have some other great effects that mill as many players as possible. Altar of the Brood mills each opponent whenever a permanent enters the battlefield under our control, from lands to the creatures that we steal from them. Mesmeric Orb mills every player whenever they untap a permanent, which, trust me, really adds up in a game of Commander. And then Psychic Corrosion mills each opponent whenever we draw a card. At a minimum, that's 2 cards for every player on each of our turns, but when combined with some of our card draw effects that we'll get onto a little later, will definitely add up a little bit more. Next up we have a bunch of cards that mill players repeatedly. What I like about cards like Eye Collector, Ruin Crab, Manic Scribe, Vantress Gargoyle, Dreamborn Muse and Mindwrack Harpy is that they are just great and consistent ways of getting some mill in, turn after turn. The more that we have and the more repeatable it is, just means we have more options of cards to reanimate with our Commander. You then have a very scary card next with Consuming Aberration, and while it might get stuck as a 3/3 if we bring it back with the Master Transcendent, its ability to mill each opponent whenever we cast a spell can just put so many cards into people's bins, it'll always be fantastic. We then have some big spells like Dread Summons and Breach the Multiverse. These both mill players a bunch while giving us some bonus value, like for example zombie tokens to pack out our board, or just straight reanimating the best things in everyone's graveyards. Then lastly we have some spells that make each opponent mill half their library in a turn. That's going to be between 30 to 40 cards from each opponent, and I'm sure in those piles we'll find something good to bring back with the Master Transcendent. Okay, so we have the ability to mill, now we want some untap effects. This is so that we can activate our Commander multiple times in a turn cycle, reanimating multiple creatures that have been milled. First up, we have by far the best card in the deck with Intruder Alarm. This is honestly really stupid. You can ignore the top line of text, that won't really matter too much. The bottom ability, however, is why we're here. It says that whenever a creature comes into play, we untap all creatures. That is honestly insane with how it works with the Master Transcendent. Because what it means is that we can tap it to bring back a creature that has just been milled back into play. When that creature comes in, it's going to untap every creature, including our commander, meaning we can tap it again to bring back another creature that was milled, which again untaps the Master Transcendent. You can do that for every creature that has been milled this turn. That is honestly unbelievably stupid. It gets even better when you add to the mix some of our ramp section that we'll get onto a little bit later. It's honestly so good, I would generally consider running some extra tutors in the deck just to go and find it. Next up we have Murkfiend Liege and Seedborn Muse. These untap all of our creatures on our opponent's turns, meaning those repeatable effects that mill players on each of their turns will really start doing work, as it gives us the opportunity to reanimate milled creatures on every turn of the game. We then have some one-time untap effects, still very solid cards with things like Manifold Key, Kiora's Follower, Magewright Stone, 1000-Year Elixir, and Tyvar Jubilant Brawler. These will let us reanimate an extra creature in a turn cycle, and the fact that the 1000-Year Elixir and Tyvar effectively give our commander haste is also going to be really useful so we can get the ball rolling straight away. Next up is our ramp section, and personally I want to tailor this to match the rest of the deck, while still running the 8 to 10 bits that we need to make the deck function. To me, the synergistic option here is Mana Dorks. I really like these in the deck, as particularly we are running those untap effects, meaning that they can do double duty by untapping these to help us ramp further. In terms of the Mana Dorks, the best place to start is with Deranged Assistant and Millicanin. Both of these cards are fantastic as they provide the ramp we need, while also giving us some incidental self-mill as well. We then have Skull Prophet, which can either generate us some mana, or again can be used for some additional self-mill. We then just have a bunch of other great mana dorks in these colours, with cards like Birds of Paradise, Deathrite Shaman, Delighted Halfling, and Elves of Deep Shadow all being really good options. Another synergistic option here is Aftermath Analyst. It's a great mill card that we can cash in on the right time to bring back all the lands that we've milled from our library into play in one go to really get our mana production going. And then obviously, yes, we have the classic Soul Rings and Rampant Growth style effects. These don't synergize much with the untap effects, but they also don't die to a board wipe, and diversity is normally a good thing, so maybe pack a couple of them. Next up we have our card draw section. Now in this deck we only need between 6 to 8 bits here, which is a little bit less than normal because we do get card advantage from all the self-mill that we're already running. First up, we have Contaminated Drink, a great X-Draw spell that on the back end gives us some bonus mill with those rad counters. We then have Maya Lurk Queen, again brings into the game some bonus rad counter milling, but then rewards us by getting bigger and then also drawing a card. Next up, we have Jason Bright Glowing Prophet. So basically, our commander brings the creatures back into play as 3/3s, and also importantly, they are mutants. That means Jason basically reads, whenever a creature we brought back with our commander dies, we draw a card. That's always just going to be very solid. We then have Guardian Project, which triggers off of the creatures that we cast, like our Mana Dorks for example, then also draws us a card whenever we bring back a creature with our commander. And then finally we have a bunch of really solid creatures that come into play and draw us some cards. You have cards like Elvish Visionary, Fibblethip the Lost, Lanoir Visionary, Muldrifter, Lord of Change, and Regal Force. These are great at packing up the card draw section and are just going to be very solid cards. The expensive ones as well, we don't actually even have to cast, we can just cheat them into play with our commander. Next up is our interaction section, and like with most decks we want to start with about 8 bits and then go up from there the more competitive that our playgroup is. We're starting with a whole host of creatures from all of the universes of Magic that come in and answer a threat. There's some very cool options here with Ravenous Chupacabra, Dalek Drone, Necron Deathmark, and Alpha Deathclaw. They're all great bits of removal and work really well with our commander, as we can bring them back into play if they ever get milled. And then on top of that, we obviously have some of the best bits of instant speed interaction out there, with cards like Assassin's Trophy, Beast Within, and Atomize. What's great about these is that they just answer a wide range of threats, and sometimes it's nice to just have an answer in the deck. Moving on to board wipes, and again we have some very good options. First we have Nuclear Fallout, a very solid card with some added mill tacked on with the addition of the bonus rad counters. Then you just have some of the most efficient board wipes in all of Magic with Toxic Deluge and Damnation. These are the best, but there's obviously more budget options out there if you need them. Next up is a little bit of protection. We have some cool bits to look at in the deck, both for our commander and also for our life total. First up we have the standard Lightning Greaves and Swiftfoot Boots. Very solid cards in any deck, but the added haste they give our commander means we can get it to work straight away. We then have Struggle for Project Purity, and specifically by choosing Enclave, we get to make it so that whenever an opponent attacks us with one or more creatures, they get twice that many rad counters. Either way from this, we come out ahead. Our opponents either don't attack us, or when they do, they get rad counters, which helps us with some more lovely mill. Talking of lovely mill, we also have Angel of Suffering. This turns any damage that we take from any source into self-mill. perfect for protecting our life total while doing exactly what the deck wants to do anyway. We then have a small package of Recursion, which is just very helpful in any deck that's putting a bunch of things into the graveyard. First up, we have Eternal Witness, a great card to either cast or bring back with our commander if it's ever milled. Why this is good is, importantly, it also lets us recur any card that we want to bring back that we've milled, like for example a land or an instant or a sorcery that we can't normally get back with our commander. You then have Kagar, Shadow Archdruid, and Muldrotha the Gravetide. These both do similar things and basically let us play lands or cast spells that we've also milled. They're both very, very good and make it so that we're never annoyed if we ever mill anything that we didn't want to. And then lastly, we have Dread Return. I honestly love this card. Its flashback means that we can cast it from the graveyard if it ever gets milled, so it's always live and ready to bring back something big and important. Talking of big and important, let's go over some dedicated ways of winning the game. First up, we have Sir Conrad the Grim and Dreadhound. These are some of the scariest cards in the deck as they ping our opponents whenever anyone mills a creature, and also when we bring one back into play. With some of the super impactful mill cards that we're running, these can honestly win us a game very quickly. You then have Zealix Sanity Flayer and Sidisi Brood Tyrant. These both make us a token board state whenever we mill a creature, while also helping us with some self-mill as well. They're just very nice to have in the deck. To help buff up those tokens and the rest of the creature-heavy deck that we have cards like Craterhoof Behemoth, Endray's Forerunners, and Kamal Heart of Crocer. They come in and make our whole board massive. They're just fantastic at ending games. You definitely only need to run one of these, but I don't think you can go wrong by throwing one of these large creatures into the deck. Talking of large creatures, we have some more beef that we can run with big impactful cards like Fleet Swallower, Hullbreaker Horror, Sepulchral Primordial, Shieldred Whispering One, and Jin-Gataxia's Core Augur. What's great about these types of cards is that they all have fantastic effects that doesn't matter what their power and toughness is or if we cast them or not. All we need to do is mill them and reanimate them with our commander, and then they come in with a bucket load of upside. There's a ton of really expensive cards out there that you can consider running in the deck. To help get those cards into play, we have a card like Haunted Crossroads. What this allows us to do is that right when we're about to mill, we can put a busted card that's already in our bin on top of our library, ready to mill and then bring straight back into play with our commander. Honestly, it's just some added control to help us get back exactly what we want with our commander at just the right time. Then we have a very busted card like Rise of the Dark Realms. If we cast this late game, I'm sure we're just going to win, as it'll bring back every creature that we've built over the whole course of the game. Very scary and just very good. Then lastly, we have a card that just does a little bit of everything in the deck, with Vault 12, the Necropolis. It comes in, it makes every player mill with the rad counters, then it makes us some mutant tokens, and then makes all those tokens and all the mutants that we brought back throughout the game larger and scarier so we can swing through and win with them. Okay, rounding off the deck with some utility lands. As we are 3 colours, we can't run too many here, but we still have some solid options that you can look at. First up, we have Mariposa Military Base. It gives us some rad counters, it can help draw us cards, it's just going to be solid. We then have Manamo School at Water's Edge, which lets us untap our commander for some extra recursion, which we just love. You then have some more recursion, but first with Mortuary Mire that can put a creature on top of our library, ready to be milled and brought back again. And then Tomb Fortress also does some milling, but brings a creature straight back into play as well. And then lastly, as a nod to some of the rad tokens that we're making, we have a card like Khan's Bastion to proliferate them all the higher. Right, that's going to do it for the video. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so, would greatly help me out. I spent way too much of the budget on suits and, dig me out of a hole. That would be really helpful. If there's any other commanders from the Fallout set you'd like me to take a look at, put it down in the comments and I'll check it out. But until next time, I'll see you all soon. Goodbye.